Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Running Wild Podcast. I'm your co-host Rich. Alongside me, as always, my co-host Runz.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we got a lot to cover this week. So just before that, I just want to remind you that we're brought to you in partnership with pwponderings.com, Last Word on ProWrestling.com, and W2Mnetwork.com. All right, so last weekend we actually got to go to the Evolve 74 show in at La Boom in Queens, New York. So just before we kind of go over some of the matches, what did you think overall of the card?
I mean, it was a great show, top to bottom. You know, the crowd was into it and just making the environment that much better. And, you know, that's all you ever really want when you go to wrestling. And it's definitely a special place for the company, and it's awesome to be there. And, you know, that it's 3 blocks away is just one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's not 3 blocks away from me, and it takes me a little longer to get back, one of the other things I like also is that it usually starts a little earlier, so
yeah,
it's not one of those things where, you know, even if I go to Raw, which is 20 minutes away at the Barclays Center, I don't get home till like midnight, you know?
It's not going to ROH show that ends at midnight and having to travel from the city, no.
Yeah, that was like 1:30 in the morning. So it's kind of, I actually like when wrestling shows are a little bit earlier in the day. But I agree. I think it was a really fun event. The crowd always makes it special. And I also, you know, I think this is maybe a little bit of my bias, but I thought this is like the second time that they've had the first show in Queens, and overall on the weekend I thought that the Queens show was a little bit stronger. Or just not on paper,
I mean,
maybe.
usually the Queen show is better. It's, you know, the card may not be as stacked, but usually because of the crowd and because of the matches that they have in relation to that, it's always usually comes off better to me. But I get what you're saying.
So we had Gulick last weekend, basically with Evolve. And he actually wrestled in the first match against Dick, who's one of the two, along with Chris Dickinson, who is trying to earn a contract. The weekend's events, they would be wrestling for a contract the next night, but they were in singles action this night. So I thought the Gulick-Dick opening match was a strong match. I think it was like a good back and forth, good opener. You know, and to me, I think it was kind of expected that Gulick was going to go over. Especially in his last weekend. So I thought it was a good showing by Dick. You know, it seems like, and you know, we're gonna kind of talk about this, but he ends up being, you know, earning that contract, and I think he can do some cool stuff, you know, going forward.
I mean, that's the beauty of Evolve in every match. You know, they're all back and forth, and even though you know somebody or you think you know who's going to win, it doesn't always work out that way. And you know, I really like Dick. I said that after we saw him the last time, and I'm glad he got the contract, and then the whole catch point thing, you know, the next night. But, you know, like you said, it was a good match. You know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the physicality, and they brought the crowd alive a little bit, and it set the tone for the rest of the night.
Completely agreed. And then you had his partner for the next night, Chris Dickinson, taking on Dustin. You know, this is probably my favorite Dustin match that I've seen in Evolve, or I've seen since his return. I thought that he was, you know, he wasn't on the mic like I've been asking for a little bit more, but he definitely played up that heel character, I think, to the umpteenth degree, and it was great. He yelled at my little brother when my brother told him he sucked, so I thought that was awesome and hilarious. I didn't get upset like that mom on Facebook this week. It definitely, you know, the heel should be yelling at people when they yell at him, and it's even better when they yell at a little kid. So
yeah, I mean, he's so good in the ring, but you know, he's such a great heel, and just being that smug, arrogant dick, and you know, yelling at your brother just made it that much better, and it was fantastic.
It was just really awesome. I was like, yes! I've never been so happy to see somebody yell at somebody else, and that's my brother. Then you had absolutely insane Darby Allin versus Brian Cage. I mean, you know, what a mismatch. Before the match, and I hadn't heard this ahead of time, but Allin had actually made a point of saying that he said that he would not be pinned. no matter what, he would not get pinned by Brian Cage. So they started off, and Allen's insane. He immediately starts with a coffin drop before Cage even gets to the ring during his entrance, and kind of gets a little bit of offense on him. Cage ends up dominating, and then does the most absurd thing I've ever seen. Tells everybody on the stage to clear way so that he can press slam Darby Allin. It's got to be 10 feet away, something like that.
I would say like 5, but to still throw
yeah.
a human being is pretty absurd.
Yeah, just launched him onto the stage, and try as he might, Allin tried to get up.
I don't know. Maybe my depth perception is a little off with the amount of space there is between the ring and that rail, but I don't think it's that much. But still, it is insane.
It was just insane. Then even Sapolsky came out to check on him to make sure he was okay. And this is one of those moments where it's nice that they have a 20 count, and not a 10 count, because it gave that extra time for him to really try to get back into the ring, and he was just too beat up to be able to make it, and just fell short. But he loses the match, but by count out, and basically, stayed true to his word that he wasn't going to get pinned. So I thought that this match was really effective, and it was nice to see Brian Cage in person too.
Right. It was, again, he's one of those guys that, you want to see, and you don't know if he'll ever get that chance, and so that's cool to see. Like you said, to see him there, and it was a perfect spot for him to come in. I don't mind him, and I like him and Page having a relationship, and their friendship is to the if Brian Cage comes back and that storyline continues.
Oh yeah, and then Page basically comes out, and he's thanking Cage, and then he starts. He calls Cody Rhodes a bullet bitch, and then Cody Rhodes comes out, and it was pretty cool. Cody Rhodes came out in Bullet Club attire, basically. Like, he had the shirt hanging, but he also had like a black and white set of trunks that were different than the. He ended up wrestling the next night somewhere else, and he wasn't wearing that gear. So this was specifically for being on TV and everything. I thought it was a good match, although I thought the ending was really weird, and it made me feel like Paige is the heel, but Paige definitely played almost like the face at the end of that match, and that's the only thing that did sit well.
That was the Ring of Honor finish. That's exactly, the ref gets down, he to the cross. He leaves to the crowd. That's exactly what happened at Ring of Honor. So that was a little weird, but it was cool to see because it's a different company, and it's. Okay, well, now this is his character here, and it'll be interesting to see if how much he comes back, because it seems like he's only doing the LaBoom shows, and I think that's a tribute to LaBoom, because he really only comes for the one, and then he's not there the second night. So it'll be interesting to see how often he's there, and if he's wearing the Bullet Club shirt and all that stuff, because the crowd is going to be too sweet and like they were and all things. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
100% agreed. And then you had Cobb versus Riddle, which was just kind of a treat for me. I don't really see a lot of Cobb's work, so it was cool to see him here, and I've heard that they have had a great rivalry. How did you think this matched up to their other matches that maybe you've seen?
It's just as good, I felt like it was a little quick, but that's probably just because I was so into the match and would have wanted them to go even longer. But it was great back and forth. I really didn't know who was going to win. I really like Jeff Cobb, and I'm glad he got the win. And then we had the whole thing with Stokely Hathaway, and now they're talking about they're trying to sign Cobb versus Thatcher for WrestleMania weekend, so that'll be a cool match. And I love them bringing in the guys like Cobb, and
it's Rumble weekend, right? San Antonio?
No, I feel like it's WrestleMania weekend, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
It might be the Rumble weekend. But yeah, whatever. They're trying to book that, so it'll be interesting to see, that match and see where they go. I love them bringing in Cobb. I love them bringing in have Ricochet and Cody. It's when you go to the shows at La Boom or the weekends that all these guys are in, it's crazy. It's Hero. It's this week it was Dick Togo and Cobb and all of these guys, Cage, Ricochet, Casa, all these guys coming in. That's like, wow, this is freaking cool.
Yep. The tag match, it was a strong title defense. I didn't see any. I didn't think that at any point that and Williams were going to lose it. But Ricochet was great. I mean, we were right in the corner by him, and he was just kind of hilariously interacting with the fans the entire time.
just straight up having a conversation. Like, everything people said, he would just respond and say something else. It was absurd.
Yeah, it was really good. And of course, he's absurd in the ring. And Kasai, I think I like to see more of him continuing, moving forward, in Evolve.
It's awesome to see, like, Darby, like, on the same show, and this is the beauty of independent wrestling and good independent wrestling. On the same show, you get to see the Brian Cage and Jaka, not Brian Cage, Darby Allin and Jaka and Dickinson and, guys who not necessarily haven't been around, but Darby just got signed and now he's at the bottom of the card, but in a good role, and then you have the Ricochets and the Jeff Cobbs and all of these guys come in where it's like, this is wrestling. This is a flawless style that, these guys are professionals. These guys could be in tomorrow. And, it's nice to see those extremes on the same show and not really like, oh man, this match sucks, I don't want to watch it. There is none of that,
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I think that speaks to Chris Hero versus Togo. Just a crazy match. Togo ends up going over, which I didn't see coming. And then Hero just basically, there are rumors that he's going to WWE. He basically ended up tweeting out, like, something to the effect of, I don't like shoddy journalism or something like that. So kind of implying that people don't know what they're talking about. But that promo he cut at the end, where he was putting over the crowd and how much he likes wrestling in front of the La Boom audience as opposed to like other places he's been, really had that feeling like he may not be coming back.
Right, and I mentioned to you that it felt weird at the time, but like he saved it a little bit and he got back into his hero character. But there were times where it was a little emotional-ish. And it was like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like, why is he giving this speech after losing whatever? So, not knowing anything at the time, and then, like, because of the match, because of how good he's been when I've seen him or on PWG, etc., I felt like I had to go buy a Chris Hero shirt. And so after the show, I went over, I fought my way through the crowd because it was absurd. And I got to Hero, and, like, the guy before me had bought a shirt and then asked for a picture. He was like, yeah, no problem, man. That's what this is about. So then, of course, I was like, oh, well, duh. So then I did the same thing and just awesome about it. Like, hey, thanks, man. Really appreciate it, So that's what wrestling is about. And that's the beauty of going to these shows and talking to these guys and, getting the pictures and just sharing a moment that then to come home and see like, oh, Chris Hero may be going to WWE in a month. Like, oh, wow. Well, that's pretty cool because if this is his last time in La Boom because they won't be back there for a while, then that's pretty cool, No,
yeah, I totally agree. I think all the guys are like that, and the best part is like you don't even have to buy a shirt, you could just be like, hey, can I take a picture? And they're like totally cool about it. And I think that fan interaction is something that makes Evolve. It's weird because I find it to be one of the really like one of the top indies in the country. You could arguably say it's in the top 5 when you're talking about companies in the United States.
Well, but that's the same thing that people would say about like AIW or those other companies that are just like Evolve but not in our area. That still have the Riddles and the Cobbs and the Heroes and basically the same roster. So what I'll say is like that core of guys that are traveling around that make up these Evolves and AIWs and they're on PWG and that sort of a thing, those companies are that easily in that top 5 now, which is awesome to say.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right, so so we went through 74 because we were there. 75, I thought was still a solid show with most of the guys that were wrestling the night before. Kind of some standout stuff. You had Jock and Dickinson earning contracts by beating Allen and Kasa. You had Paige kind of riding the ship a little bit in terms of being the heel and beating Togo. But Togo, got a little kind of action on the gatekeeper afterwards. Dustin and Hero had a pretty interesting match in terms of the fact that Dustin normally doesn't. I haven't seen him wrestle just that straight kind of striking style, and I felt that this match was more along that style, and it was nice to see the way he was able to mesh with Hero. Ricochet and Riddle, just I don't know what to say about these two. I love seeing Ricochet. I hope he keeps coming back to Evolve. It seems like when he came to Evolve at Evolve 68 weekend, it was more of a fluke, like he was open, so he ended up showing up. But now he seems like he's there more, so I hope that they start involving him in some more stories.
Well, I mean, he's going to WWE in the next year. So as soon as his Lucha Underground contract, like as soon as season 3 is over, he's free. Like, so I think, him being in Evolve is a step in that direction, because that's kind of how it seems to go sometimes, where they have these guys here for their one of their last weekends or that sort of thing. Oh, WWE has their eye on them, let's bring them to Evolve and keep a little closer of an eye on them, find out how they work and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they did that with Roddy, they did that with Cedric, so
right. So I think that's the way things go. And hey, and also maybe they did that with Hero,
I think you're right about that. And then you had Gulick, the catch point explodes. You had Gulick versus Williams. This was a really long match. I thought it was good, but I think that they could have cut out like 8 minutes, and it would have been a little bit stronger. It seemed to drag on just a bit at certain points.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are so prototypical, like, just black trunks and wrestling. Like, so when they're brawling and the stories they're telling are phenomenal, but there are times, yes, when it gets a little long in the tooth, and it's just like, oh, all right, come on, let's let this pick up again. But it always does pick up, and the story was there, the history is there, the future ramifications are there. They had the, if Gulick won, then Catchpoint couldn't be in the WWN title tournament, and the same for Gulick. So, that's a nice little twist. You don't want to say, if you lose, you're gone from Evolve, because then that would hurt if he ever had to come back or something like that. So I like that little twist, and it was a good match.
No, I thought it was a good match. At the end, Williams ends up winning, which is what should have happened, because Gulick is obviously kind of leaving. Gulick not only metaphorically passed the leadership role, the torch, but at the end, and I thought I was a little surprised by this. Jock and Dickinson came out and asked if they could be part of Catchpoint, and Gulick had just finished putting Catchpoint over and saying that Williams was right, and then he hands the mic over to Williams to make the decision.
Right, and it was cool because, like I said, I really like Jock and Dickinson, whatever, but I've enjoyed his work with Jaka and this whole thing. So we'll see what happens with the Catchpoint. But, they were on the stage the whole time watching the match. And while it was going on, I was like, that's a little interesting. Like, are they scouting them? I was like, but what would be cool? Like, if they just, hey, can we join Catchpoint? And then that's exactly what happened. And I was like, crazy. What the hell? Wait, am I just like, is this my vision in my mind, or is this actually happening? And then it was happening, and I was like, wow, this makes perfect sense. These guys need some type of role. They were fighting a little more babyface-ish this past weekend, so it felt like it makes sense.
It does, but my only thing with it was I felt like they could have waited till the next show. Williams could have said something like, okay, so if you want to earn a spot, you got to fight us, because it isn't Catchpoint all about competition, making them better. But then,
Gulick wouldn't have been there to be like, hey, you know what? This is your show now. You make the decision. So okay. I don't mind that part. And with Yehai, it was the same thing. It was like, he's in catch point, but then he was coming out with them with the towel and, just being in the corner. And then he started having the matches, and then they went from there. So I'm assuming it'll be the same type of thing.
All right. Okay. So then that explanation makes me a little bit more accepting of it, to be honest with you. All right. So that was Evolve. Now we can move on to, we'll really kind of talk about Raw as we're talking about Roadblock. Or do you want to do SmackDown first?
I mean, we could just quickly touch on SmackDown and then discuss Raw with Roadblock.
So some of the big news from SmackDown: you had the Tag Team Championship number one contender Battle Royal, and now they're gonna have to change things up because the Hype Bros end up winning.
Yeah.
And during the match, Zack Ryder injured his knee, so I'm not sure what they're gonna do about that. I mean, also, considering it was the Hype Bros, I mean, I guess the Hype Bros would have just been fed to the Wyatt, so now you just somehow need to get somebody else to step in to be that.
Right. They just lost that, like, cushion match, that just like, okay, let's put over the heels versus some guys the crowd loves and move on to something more important for the Rumble or WrestleMania, whatever. But, so yeah, they lose that little filler. It'll be interesting to see what they do, who they put there. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. I'm really enjoying the Wyatts. Luke Harper was awesome in the Fatal 4-Way, and I mean, they kept telling you how awesome they were. But it was a good showing for the Wyatts on SmackDown. I'm enjoying that, and we'll see who they plug into that tag team storyline.
Yeah, and speaking of the 4-Way, then you end up having Dolph versus Dean Ambrose versus Miz versus Luke Harper to determine the number one contender. And I'm glad that Ambrose didn't win again. I think it's a little too early for Harper. It doesn't make sense for Miz because he has the IC title. So Dolph was like the logical choice.
Having that first segment where the Miz and AJ had an interaction, I was like, oh, well, maybe they're just going to, like, kind of swap AJ here or just have him be the babyface in this one or whatever. Maybe they add someone else. But, the Miz-Ambrose stuff has been going on, so that's a perfectly fine storyline for both of them. And, yes, you're right. Dolph was the logical choice. That whole match, I figured he was going to win, but they made it so enjoyable that it was perfectly fine. It was well done. I didn't want to see it come down to Dolph and Ambrose because just like, all right, here we go again with both of these guys. So, whatever. Well, it'll be a great match. They'll have a really good back and forth story told in that ring. So, whatever. It'll be good for what it is. That's what the Rumble is. Like, it's that babyface placeholder for WrestleMania,
Yeah, I mean, it'll be, I don't know, funny moment yesterday. I was at my son's birthday party, and my little brother started calling my sister AJ Styles because she got her hair cut, and it looks like AJ. And I'm not sure if that's more an indictment on AJ Styles' choice in haircuts, but my sister seemed very upset because she has no idea who AJ is, so she's like, why are you telling me I look like a wrestler? Like, that's not fair. And I looked at her, and I wasn't trying to even be a jerk, but I was like, your hair looks exactly like
no, you do have the same haircut now.
Like, I wasn't even being mean. Like, he asked me as I was walking by, I looked up and I was like, oh yeah, totally. So, I mean, the weird thing is, with Ziggler, it just feels like at some point he's got to have sustained success, So we'll see what happens.
It's not going to be now, so.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I mean, he has a match on SmackDown, right? So he'll just lose and that'll be it. I don't know. If the rumors of Taker are true or anything of that nature, then we gotta get moving on that. So maybe that'll be the leading point to something else. Maybe after he beats Dolph, he'll really be like, I beat everyone. No one can beat me, and then cue the Undertaker, but I don't know.
All right. So, last thing we really have to discuss is the Roadblock PPV. That'll be tonight. So hopefully you guys get to listen to this, and if not, you guys get to hear our predictions and how wrong we might be. All right. So for the kickoff show, you have Big Cass versus Rusev.
Yeah, I don't understand why this is the kickoff match. Like, just put something else, anything else on the kickoff. It doesn't have to be. I like this storyline.
Yeah. It's starting to be like, the truth of the matter is the kickoff is just part of the show.
It is. But, yeah.
Even in the way that, like, there have been events where I feel like that the face going over to pop the crowd at the beginning happens in the pre-show.
Right, but how many times do you actually watch the pre-show? It's not every time. There's no way.
Oh, no.
By that, it's still the pre-show.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's just a product of my wife not being able to take.
Well, but, either way, I've really enjoyed this storyline. I like that Rusev is the bad guy for defending his wife, but whatever.
That's...
I've really enjoyed the Enzo stuff. I thought that was great. It just makes sense that Cass is coming to his aid, and we're getting a little bit more of that. My partner is an idiot, and I'm trying to stop him from being an idiot between them. And maybe at some point that, not maybe at some point, but at some point that's going to boil over.
Yeah, it's so funny because if this was like 1998, or no, not 1998, like 1996, this is like Shawn Michaels is a heel and he's having Diesel fight his battles for him because he's going after a guy's, married wife. And then, in 2016, Rusev's the bad guy, which is a little weird. But anyway, I've been enjoying the feud too. I hope that they don't end up breaking up anytime soon.
I don't think it'll be soon, but
I was reading this article. I think it's like something called like the Martin Jannetty effect or something, and it's just like at this point, whenever we see a team, we're like, okay, so when they split up, because it's like WWE is always going to do that, I think it was actually an article about the Young Bucks, and Matt Jackson said that he would rather retire than ever end up splitting away from Nick.
Right. So I mean, there are teams such as the Revival or Alpha. Those guys are so good that they deserve singles runs at some point. But there are a bunch of teams where, yes, like the Young Bucks, like the Revival, like I said, that there's no need to split them up. They are what they are. They're perfect at that, and leave it alone. But Enzo and Cass, they're both good, and they can both have a role as singles guys. And eventually, Cass needs to get that push. He's big enough. He's a good enough talker. He's good enough in the ring where he'll be he could be a big star for in Vince's mind or for the company. So I don't think Enzo not listening to Cass and going to the hotel and getting his ass beat is the start of any real tension, but I think it will be used to show later on, like, man, this guy is an idiot. He doesn't listen to me. He's holding me back. That sort of thing.
All right, yeah, I can see that. Like the planting the seeds for at some point in the future.
Right. Eventually down the line, we're going to do this. So let's have these little moments thrown in here and there. It'll be interesting because it's the pre-show. I think Cass gets the win, but it'll be interesting. I would like to see Rusev get the win, and then Cass is really tight because he got his ass beat or something like that. But I think Enzo will come back and he'll cost Rusev or something like that.
Okay.
There's no, Rusev doesn't have a tag partner, right? Like, there's nobody.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that. So you're saying that Enzo comes out or Enzo distracts Rusev?
Yeah.
There's a part of me that so just to get things to be a little more exciting, I'm gonna go with Rusev wins and kind of hurts Cass, so that Enzo has to feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on, they just announced, well, because of the Tribute to the Troop show,
Right.
that there's going to be a tag team match. It's going to be Cesaro and Sheamus versus the New Day.
I mean, is it too cliche if they just lose the titles right now? Like, they just the record, okay, now you can lose the belts. Like, I feel like that's... I would have loved, on Raw, they did a fantastic job of selling me in both of those triple threat matches that someone else was going to win and they weren't going to break the record. And I would have been fine with it, like the record isn't a real thing anyway. It's awesome. And you have to have some type of credibility and overness to hold the belt that long. Don't get me wrong. But it would have been okay if they were the second longest reigning in history and they lost it on the night where they could have broken it. That's something I would have remembered more than they're the longest reigning champs,
Yeah, and now what happens? Now, I don't know.
I wouldn't, I'll say this. I wouldn't mind seeing Cesaro and Sheamus win, but I'm a little down on the fact now, like, okay, they just broke it, so now they can lose. I almost don't want to see that.
Yeah,
let them lose at Mania or something.
Yeah, not at end of the line.
Yeah, even though that's a fitting name.
Well, yeah, I just mean not at the second Roadblock named pay-per-view of the year. Like, just come on. So I'm going to go with New Day retaining because I don't think this is the moment for them to lose.
I'll just say Cesaro and Sheamus because I think they might take it off of them.
All right. Then my boy Sami Zayn, all he has to do is he's got a 10-minute time limit match with Braun Strowman. So essentially, he just needs to survive the 10 minutes to be the awesome Sami Zayn while not winning the match, would you say?
Yeah. And I mean, the promo on Monday was really good. I love seeing that fire out of Sami. And
fuck McFoley. Fuck McFoley. I literally lost my mind. I think Raw got the better end of that fake trade, if you ask me. Eva Marie is a hell of a talent, and she's all read everything. So I think she would have been great on Raw. She would have been done better off than Sami Zayn. But since the trade wasn't real, unfortunately for Raw, they get stuck with Sami. And it's good. They just feed him to the wolves, and Braun will kill him in a minute, and that'll be it. I can't. If Mick Foley was in my house, he would have been happy with the fire that I was showing when I thought that trade was real. I was losing my mind. I wasn't even, and it's funny because I want Zayn on SmackDown, but I was fucking furious. And it was
and that was the beauty of it to me. Like, oh, you want to get traded? All right, fine. Here's how much I value. I thought that was brilliant. If they were going that way, I thought that was great. Like, all right, well, now you're going to light a fire under him to go to SmackDown and want to come back and kill you. So either way, I thought it would have been good, and I like that. It was just like, there was no trade. This was all just to make sure you had it. I don't mind that. I thought it was good. Sami Zayn had it at that fire because we know he does. And so that was good. What happens? Does he last that 10 minutes and Strowman kills him after? Or I don't know. What happens?
I think he lasted 10 minutes.
Because he doesn't have to beat Strowman. Right. So but how? Like, is he just going to... He's going to get annihilated and just keep kicking out, like the Kevin Owens stuff, right?
Kind of like what Darby Allin did against Cage.
Yeah, or Sami Zayn has done to Kevin Owens their whole career.
I don't like to talk about that. All right, so you're going to go with Strowman?
No, I think he's going to last.
All right, next up we have the Cruiserweight Champion, Rich Swann, defending against TJ Perkins and Brian Kendrick. I think that they've built this up well, kind of traditionally with like guys getting wins over each other. And, TJ deserves a shot because he was, the first champion and kind of got cheated by Kendrick. And then Swann took it from Kendrick. So I think this makes sense. And it's one of the better stories they've been telling in the Cruiserweight division.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only story they've been telling in the Cruiserweight division. But, yeah, I agree. Swan just won it, so I don't think he's going to lose it. But this should be a good match, and this should be, as long as they give them some nice time, this should be pretty chaotic and, with some really good story being told.
Excuse me, but you're forgetting that the two other stories we have are that Cedric is with Alicia Fox, and also that Jack Gallagher is such a gentleman that when he goes to interfere, he announces that he's going to interfere in someone's match, which is just
that was great.
Love that guy. All right, then we have Seth Rollins. I'm sorry. So, what do you think happens here? I think Swan retains.
I said I think Swan just won it, so I don't think he's losing it.
All right. Then we have Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho. I feel like a broken record when I say this, but Jericho doesn't need to win. I expect Rollins to win this one.
The only thing there is that Jericho seems poised to fight Owens. So does he get that? Maybe you have Owens try to help him and end up costing him or something of that nature. Or Owens Jericho loses and then Owens says like, oh, see, you couldn't get it done without me. And then they have some type of a feud there. But, I think Rollins is on his way to Triple H, so he needs the win. And, Jericho's on his way seemingly to Owens, and so he kind of needs to win. But, all that being said, I think Rollins is going to get it, and somehow this loss will help fuel that Jericho-Owens storyline.
Complete agreement. So then we have a 30-minute Iron Man match between Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair. So, I guess I understand, like, part of me wants to see a 60-minute when I hear Iron Man match. Like, 30-minute Iron Man matches are for when I have to wrestle in the game, and I don't want to do 15-minute Iron Man matches because I feel that's cheap. So the 30-minute one, I'm not as excited about, but of course these two are always doing something crazy, so I'm sure it'll be a great match. I'm good.
Go ahead.
I think I'm going to go with Charlotte here because of the pay-per-view thing.
The Bayley Sasha 31-minute Iron Woman was great. So I think 30 minutes is good. But I don't know. Do we maybe possibly see a tie here, and then we get a 60-minute at like WrestleMania or something like that? I think that would be too much to push this storyline another 4+ months. But could I see them doing it? I could. But I think now is the time for Sasha to get the win, and kind of put a bookmark on this storyline for a while, and move on.
I hope they kind of take a little bit of a breather here. I think after this they need to be separate. A draw would be interesting, but then it takes away from Charlotte. Well, it should still be undefeated at pay-per-views, so I guess that works. It feels weird for me to agree with a draw, so I'm just going to go with Charlotte.
All
right. Just so that she stays, undefeated, but by winning each time.
Yeah, I think Sasha gets the win, but I could see a draw.
All right, and then the last match is Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. I don't see any way that Owens loses this match.
That little pause right there was the Roman Reigns factor, and that's enough to get me involved in this match, because there's always a chance, right? Like there's always a chance that Roman Reigns could end up with the belt, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it should happen, obviously, but Owens gets the win somehow, hopefully clean, hopefully by himself, and then they move on in whatever way they're going to go.
Yeah, I'm hoping for Owens. If Reigns wins, I'm not watching another WWE pay-per-view until next month. Oh wait, is that actually going to happen?
I believe so.
That's
because they had their December pay-per-view, and I think the next one is just the Rumble.
Oh my goodness, it's a Christmas miracle. All right, so that wraps up our coverage. I just want to remind you guys that we are running a contest. All you have to do is make sure that you tag Running Wild LWOS. You can tag at also Glory Pro 2017, and make sure you enter the hashtag Big Mike Versus, and enter somebody that you'd like to see Michael Elgin take on in his Glory Pro promotion. We have 2 second row tickets to the show, so we still have some time, but make sure you put that hashtag out so you put yourself in the running. You got anything else, Runz?
No, that's it.
All right, so just make sure you guys you can check. Obviously you can check us out on iTunes. Please go over and leave a review and rate us. You can follow us on SoundCloud as well, and Stitcher, Spreaker, and Google Play. I don't think anyone follows us on Google Play, but go ahead, you can check it out for all our Android users out there. And make sure you guys send over any emails to runningwildpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on our website at runningwildpodcast.com. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can go over to Rich_Laconi and check out my extensive Ring of Honor and Evolve coverage over at PW Ponderings, as well as my more WWE-centric stuff on Last Word on ProWrestling.com. And with that, just want to remind you guys that you've been listening to the podcast that is just too
Sweet.
Well, we'll see what that actually makes sense. So that'll be interesting moving forward.